and the other one is chemicallyspeaking.com. And there will always be something of interest there for everyone. So if you have any questions about anything that I talked about, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Questions?
So I know you have to deal with a lot of sensitive people. A lot of times you get into the arguments with them, they end up getting to be emotionally heated in some way, shape, or form. How do you get around that?
Very difficult. Yeah, you tend to get emotionally very heated. I mean, there are some things that I have just found it is better to stay away from. For example, I will not debate creationists. It's futile. It's futile because here, on one hand, you argue science versus faith. It's not on this. I wouldn't even say that it's not a level playing field. It's not even the same playing field. And once you are, talking about belief and faith, you're not going to convince anyone with science. There are people who, of course, do become very, very emotional when it comes to health. There's widespread belief, for example, that cancer cures exist, but they are being hidden by, this unethical pharmaceutical empire, big pharma, that is out there, because if they actually had drugs that cured cancer, they would lose their business, etc. Okay, I mean, I have to confront this stuff all the time. And it usually comes out of desperation. People who get sick will start to believe absolutely anything. I try to be calm, and explain to them what the science is, how we know, and who should be believed, and why something that comes in the New England Journal is more likely to be factual than something that you read in People magazine or in the National Enquirer. But it's not something that you can do in a few minutes. It takes time to engage in these discussions. So I keep coming back to the fact that we need to improve education early on, because then many of these questions never get asked. For example, I'll never be asked by a question in one of my organic chem classes whether or not synthetic vitamin C is better or worse than natural vitamin C. Because the question doesn't need to be asked. They have the background to make the decision for themselves, knowing that it's all based on molecular structure, and that molecule of ascorbic acid doesn't know if it was made in a lab or if it was made in a bush. It's the same. But of course, to the general public, that's different. They don't think like that. To someone who's not scientifically educated, vitamin does not mean the same thing that it means to us. We think of it as a physical entity of fixed molecular structure. To many people, vitamin is kind of the essence of the food, or enzymes even more so, with no understanding of what that is. And processing of food, adding chemicals to it, destroys its natural components. Well, these are very hard things to explain to someone who has no idea what an atom or a molecule is. So there's no simple answer. It does take a lot of patience, and there are different classes of people in terms of being able to convince them. There are those who are scientifically very astute, who of course will immediately pick up on a scientific explanation. There are those whose mind is made up, and no matter what you do, you're not going to convince them. Those are the ones that there's no point in arguing with. But then there's a big segment of the population in the middle who legitimately are interested and don't know, and will be convinced by the proper arguments. Those are the ones that there's point to dealing with. But the ones whose minds are made up, you're never going to convince them. And unfortunately, there are many people's minds are made up about all kinds of ridiculous things. And someone who's convinced that UFO abductions are real, answer that the government is hiding things. And anything else?
communicate an idea to an audience, there should be a certain trust between you. They should trust what you say and not be legitimate. And I do find that a lot of people in the public feel that they do not trust the scientists
Yes.
figures sometimes.
Yeah.
There's this whole conspiracy theory that everybody's coming together to hide ideas, that we're spreading the idea that vaccines are fine to mess up
Right.
the public, or that evolution is real because we want to steer them off courses.
Sure, this is conspiracy theories abound about all kinds of things. I mean, from, the 9/11 conspiracy that it was all, well, depending who you listen to, done by the CIA, the buildings were blown up from the inside, and, no airplane ever crashed into the Pentagon, that it was some sort of missile. I mean, this kind of nonsense. Of course, then you ask them the question, all right, maybe, a plane didn't crash into the Pentagon, maybe it was a missile. What happened to the plane that's missing, all right? Of course, they'll say that, it was flown elsewhere and the people were kept hidden. I mean, ridiculous things. There is widespread distrust of the scientific community these days. There is. And unfortunately, some of it is self-inflicted, because the pharmaceutical industry has repeatedly shot itself in the foot. I mean, we saw many examples. Vioxx is one. I mean, Vioxx was a very, very effective drug against arthritis and inflammatory conditions, but it came with some baggage. It did cause heart complications. Well, it turns out that Merck knew about those complications long before that information ever got out. They tried to hide it in order to boost sales. Now, of course, when you hear a story like that, you assume that all pharmaceutical companies do nefarious things. Well, some do, most don't. But, I mean, these are the things that fuel the conspiracy theories.
Do you have any tips for us as future scientists to deal with the kind of things, try to heal some of this investment?
Yeah, how do you try to heal this kind of stuff? What I always try to do is to get on to discussions of how we know what we know and who's trustworthy and where information comes from that's reliable, and try to explain that Health Canada and FDA are actually not rogue organizations that are in cahoots with the evil big pharma empire to spread nonsense. But it's really only when you work with these people, when you work with the staff at Health Canada, that you see that these are very good people, and I mean they're bent on trying to make things as safe as possible for us. But the quacks are very powerful, and they're very good at getting their message out. I mean, the most popular health website out there is not FDA's site, it's not Cancer Society, nothing like that. The most popular website is by Joe Mercola, who's an American osteopath, and is a total nutcase. Virtually everything on that website is wrong. He sells all kinds of ridiculous supplements, but basically he sells the idea that the scientific community cannot be trusted, and that if you have cancer and if you go for what he calls cutting or burning, cutting of course refers to surgery, burning refers to radiation, or poisoning, which refers to chemotherapy, that if you go that route you will die. And the way to counter this is with his natural remedies. And this is the most popular health website because it's seductive. It's much more seductive to think that you'll cure your cancer by drinking apple cider vinegar than that you have to be cut open and then blasted with radiation. Right?
Are there opportunities for students to get involved as volunteers through your office or where else on campus?
Yes, there are. We use some student interns, to write things for the website. I use some student interns to go out and do investigations, try to catch some of the quacks and trap them. We've done a number of things like that. Yeah, so we do have some opportunities. it depends on which semester. Sometimes I have more than I can possibly use, so it depends. Okay, thank you.
All right, so just before eating, we have a draw with a very special prize that nobody knows about, not even Dr. Schwarcz. Actually, let's just draw the name first. So we'll ask Dr. Schwarcz to pick a lucky winner. Dennis Sue.
Go once.
That's right. Sophie Lee. All right. And
Congratulations.
so the prize. The prize is Dr. Joe's Brain Sparks. An awesome book written by Dr. Joe Schwarcz.
Let me sign it for you.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
you're really lucky.